Morning students, hello, how are you? I hope you are staying at home and you people are following all the rules, COVID protocols. Okay, so stay at home, stay safe and be blessed. Now children, today I am going to do a very interesting story, that is The Selfish Giant, and it is written by Oscar Wilde. Okay, so it is written by, who is the writer? Oscar Wilde. Though it is written at last, but we pronounce it as Oscar Wilde. Now, so children, before starting and reading the story, I am going to tell you the background of the story. Okay, so first of all I am going to tell you about the background. So once upon a time children, there was a very beautiful garden of the giant. Okay, and that garden was really very beautiful. Children used to come from nearby places and they used to play in it. Every afternoon, as they were coming from the school, when they used to return back from the school, they used to enter the large and lovely garden with flowers and peach tree. But the giant was selfish. One day when he returned home after 7 years of stay with his friend, he saw the children playing in the garden. He shouted at them angrily and they ran away. The giant decided not to allow anybody else to play there. So he built a high boundary wall around it. He also put up a notice that outsider entering the garden will be punished. The poor children had no other place to go. They did not like to play on the dusty road full of stones. Then the spring came all over the country. Only in the garden of the selfish giant it was still winter. No flowers bloomed and no birds sang. Why? Because the reason was that he did not allow the children to enter inside the garden. So no flower was seen in the garden, no flower bloomed, and no bird came inside the garden and sang. The only visitor were the snow and the frost, which painted all the trees silver. Now children, in everybody's garden, it can be clearly seen the beautiful spring season was there, but in his garden only winter, the snow and the frost was seen there, and the whole garden was looking silver. The north wind roared there all day. It also asked the hailstone to come. So children, there was a very terrible scene in the garden. Still winter was seen, and this time no spring came inside the garden. And children, what are the qualities of the spring season? Lot of fruits and lot of flowers blooms there in the garden with lovely green grasses and green tree. But in his garden, nothing was seen, not even a single flower, not even a single bird was seen on the tree, because all the garden was covered with snow. The giant wondered why the spring passed by his garden, why it is always winter there, while as in other people's garden, the spring season has arrived. One morning he heard some lovely music of a linned songbird outside his window. He jumped out of bed and looked out. He saw a wonderful sight. The children had crept in through a hole in the wall. They were sitting on the branches of trees which gladly welcomed them with flowers. Only in one corner it was still winter. A small boy was wandering all around the tree and crying. He was too small to climb up. The giant's heart melted. He went out in the garden. The children ran away on seeing him. The garden became winter again. But when he put his small boy up into the tree, it broke into flowers. The flowers started blooming in his garden. The boy threw his arms round his neck and kissed the giant. Other children noticed the change in the giant's behavior, so they were happy and they came back to the garden. The giant knocked down the wall and started playing with them. He wanted to see the small boy whom he had put up into the tree, but he had gone away. Years went by, time has passed, and children, with the passing of the time, the giant became old and weak. He realized that the children were the most beautiful flowers of his garden. One winter morning, he saw a tree covered with lovely white flowers and silver fruits. Under it stood the little boy. He came running close to the boy. He noticed two nail wounds, each on the boy's arms and on the little feet. So children, I think all know, you can guess who was he. In fact, he was Lord Christ. He was Jesus Christ. When the giant saw the two wounds on his arms and on the little feet, he was very angry, and he declared angrily that he would kill the cruel man who had injured him. At this, the child told him that those were the wounds of love. It further told that he had come to take him to his garden, which was paradise. In the afternoon, the giant was found lying dead under the tree. So children, this is the story, and the message of the story that we should be kind and humble towards each other. Now children, I am going to discuss the story with you. Okay, so we will take out our books. Okay, you take this book. It so happened, and children, open to the third lesson. What is the third lesson here? The selfish giant, and open to page number 17. So let's continue our lesson. So now I am going to read the story of the selfish giant. Okay, and I will be explaining you the lesson. So the giant garden was beautiful and children loved to play in it. The giant, who was selfish, built a high wall round his lovely garden. Children did not enter the garden thereafter, nor did spring and summer, till the giant experienced a change of heart. So every afternoon, as they were coming from school, the children used to go and play in the giant garden. So children, in the beginning of the lesson, it has been told, when those children they used to return back from the school, they used to play in the giant's garden. It was a large and lovely garden with soft green grass. So the garden was very beautiful with soft and lovely grass in it. Here and there over the grass stood beautiful flowers like stars, and children, lovely flowers like stars were there there all over the grass. These flowers are compared with the stars. And there were 12 peach trees, that is the spring time broke out into delicate blossom of pink and pearl. And children, peach is a type of fruit. It's a mixture of orange and pink. So beautiful blossom of pink and pearl, and in the autumn both rich fruit. That means children, whenever the fruit is there, before that flower is there. So beautiful flower of pink and pearl in the color were there. And that in the autumn those flowers go on to rich fruit. The birds sat on the trees and sang so sweetly that the children used to stop their games in order to listen to them. The children, the bird used to sit on the tree and sang so sweetly that the children used to stop their games in order to listen to them. How happy we are here. And they told how happy they are there. They cried to each other. One day the giant came back. He had been to visit his friend. So the giant had been there to visit his friend, the Cornish orgy. Now children, Cornish orgy is believed that they are the giant from in the United Kingdom. Only in legends and fairy tale stories are a cruel giant who eats people. Now children, there are different type of giants. So all these are those categories of giant who eats people. A very frightening person, gruff. Okay, they look very frightening. How we are happy here, they cried to each other. No, one day the giant came back. He had been to visit his friend, the Cornish ogre, and had stayed with him for 7 years. So for 7 years, he was there with his friend, and after that, he returned back to his garden, and he was quite annoyed to see that the children were playing in his garden. What are you doing here? He cried in a gruff voice. So he cried in a gruff voice to the children. Gruff means rough. What is the meaning of gruff? Gruff means a rough voice. So he cried in a rough voice to the children that what are you doing here? And the children were so frightened that they ran away from there. So children, here gruff means rough. Gruff means rough. My own garden. Now open to page number 18. My own garden is my own garden, said the giant. Anyone can understand that, and I will allow nobody to play in it but myself. Now children, with his friend, when he came from there, he became more cruel. He told the children that my own garden is my own garden and nobody is allowed to come inside the garden. They should not play. I will be the only person who will be in the garden. So he built a high wall and all round it and put up a notice board. Now children, he had put a notice board. Trespassers will be prosecuted. Now trespassers, what is the meaning of trespassers? Trespassers means those who enter somebody's land without permission. Those who enter somebody's land without permission, those are trespassers and prosecuted. That means officially he would be charged. Okay. So what is trespasser? Those who enters in somebody's house without permission or in somebody's property without permission, they will be prosecuted. He was a very selfish giant. The poor children had now nowhere to play. They tried to play on the road, but the road was very dusty and full of hard stone. So children, these children, they had now nowhere to play. They tried to play on the road, but the road was very dusty and full of hard stone, and they did not like it. They used to wander round the high walls where their lessons were over and talk about the beautiful garden inside. Now children, after returning back from the school, they talked about the beautiful garden inside, and they used to say how happy we used to be there, they said to each other. Then the children, after some time, the spring season came, and all over the country there were little blossom and little birds. So children, I think spring is the best season. I think everybody knows, a lot of flowers, green, lush green trees, grasses, beautiful flowers can be seen all around the world. So children, then the spring came. Spring is one of the best seasons, and all over the country there were little blossoms and little birds. Blossoms are flowers. Only in the garden of the selfish giant it was still winter. But children, it was a bad luck for selfish giant that it was still winter in his garden. That means neither the flowers bloomed nor the birds came. Okay, no, even the peach tree, no peach tree was there, no fruit was there in the peach tree. The bird did not care to sing in as there was no children. Now children, the bird also did not sing near his garden because they could not see any children. And the trees forgot to blossom, and there the trees, the flower tree, they forgot to blossom. Once a beautiful flower put its head out from the grass, but when it saw the notice board, it was so sorry for the children that it slipped back into the ground again. Now children, one of the beautiful flower which were like a star, it put its head out from the grass to see the children, but since there was no children, so again it went off to sleep, as if every flower, every tree, all the birds in his garden, they were waiting for the little children. The only people who were pleased were the snow and the frost. Spring has forgotten this garden, they cried, so we will live here all the year round. Now the snow and the frost, they told, spring has forgotten this garden, and we will live here all the year round. The snow covered up the grass with a great white cloth, and the frost painted all the trees silver. Then they invited the north wind to stay with them, and it also came. So children, north wind is a cold wind. He was wrapped in fur, and he rode all day about the garden. Now children, that wind, it was in fur, and he rode all day about the garden and blew the chimney pots down. This is a delightful spot. Now why it was delightful spot, children? Because north wind, okay, and all these things, they generally are seen in winter, and they did not come in the spring period. They did not come there during the springtime. So children, they were very much delighted that everywhere in the world was spring except this garden, so that they can nicely live there. We must ask hail on a visit. They also told that we will invite hailstorm on the visit. Okay. Hail, children, are the frozen snowball. Okay. So the hail came every day for 3 hours. He rattled on the roof. Rattle is made a harsh noise. So he used to fall on the roof of the house of that giant, and the roof of the castle, till he broke most of the slates, and then he ran round and round the garden as fast as he could go. Now children, when he used to fall on the roof of the giant, many slates, many tiles, clay tiles were broken, and afterward he used to run towards the garden. He was dressed in grey, and his breath was like ice. Now children, grey is considered to be a color which indicates gloom, sadness in our life. So he used to dress in grey, and his breath was like ice. I cannot understand why the spring is so late in coming, said the selfish giant. Now the selfish giant told that I cannot understand that why is so much cold is there in, and my whole garden has turned white. I hope there will be a change in the weather. Now children, he told that I hope there will be change in the weather. But the spring never came, nor the summer. The autumn gave golden fruit to every garden, but to the giant garden she gave none. He is too selfish, she said. So it was always winter there, and the north wind and the hail and the frost and the snow danced about through the trees. One morning the giant was lying awake in bed when he heard some lovely music. It sounded so sweet to his ears that he thought it must be the king's musician passing by. So children, this was the condition: no children, no spring, no flowers, no world. What was seen? Only the hail, snow, north wind, which is not considered good for anybody. One morning, the giant was lying awake in bed when he heard some lovely music. It sounded so sweet to his ears that he thought it must be the king musician. So he thought this king's musician must be passing. It was really only a little linnet singing outside his window. And children, just before that, a little linnet. Linnet is a singing bird. It is a brown color singing bird in Europe. But that it seemed to him to be the most beautiful music in the world. And children, when he heard this, it seems that it was the most beautiful music he had heard. Then the hail stopped dancing over his head, and the north wind ceased roaring, and a delicious perfume came to him. And suddenly, children, the hail storm stopped. Okay, and a delicious perfume came to him through the open casement. I believe that the spring has come at last, said the giant, and he jumped out of bed and he looked out. Now children, when he heard the beautiful music of the bird and children, some other thing, he felt that it is the spring which came again in his garden. So, to celebrate the return of the children, trees covered themselves with birds and blossoms. The giant was delighted to see friends back, especially a little boy whom he loved dearly. The little boy soon disappeared, only to return much later. Now, these are the points. Now, we are here at the second part of the story. So, these are the things which we are going to study. Okay. Saw a most wonderful sight. Now, children, as you can see in the picture also, he saw a most wonderful sight. Through a little hole in the wall, the children had crept in, and they were sitting in the branches. So, children, through a little hole in the wall, the children had crept in, and they were sitting in the branches of the tree. In every tree that he could see, there was a little child, and the tree were so glad to have the children back again that they had covered themselves with blossom. Now, children, when he saw, it was really a very wonderful sight. Through a little hole in the wall, the children had crept. There was a hole in the wall, and all the children came through that wall, and they were sitting in the branches of the tree. In every tree that he could see, there was a little child. In all the trees he could see, there were little children all over the tree, and the tree were so glad to have the children back again that they had covered themselves with blossom and waving their arms gently above the children's hands. So children, the trees were so happy. As you can see, it was covered with blossom. Even the flowers you can see in the garden of the giant, even they put their head out from the sleep. Okay, and the trees were waving over the children's head. The birds were flying about and twittering with delight. So all the birds, they were flying about. Even the birds were there in the garden, and the students, they were twittering with delight. Okay. And the flowers were looking up through the green grass and laughing. Children, the flowers were looking up through the green grass and they were laughing. It was a lovely scene. Only in one corner it was still winter. It was the farthest corner of the garden. Now children, it was a lovely scene, but at one corner of the garden It was still winter. It was the farthest corner of the garden, and in it was standing a little boy. Now, children, he saw a very small boy was standing there, and he was crying bitterly. The poor tree was still covered with frost and snow, and children, the poor tree was still covered with frost and snow, and the north wind was blowing and roaring above it. "Climb up, little boy," said the tree, and it bent its branches down as low as it could, but the boy was too tiny. Now, children, the tree, when the boy started crying, the tree even were so kind to him that it bent one of the branches down, and he told the boy to climb on that tree. And the giant heart melted, children, but the boy, unfortunately, he was not able to children climb because he was very small. When the giant see all this thing, his heart was melted, and the giant heart melted as he looked out. "How selfish I have been," and he told, "How selfish I have been," he said. "Now I know why the spring would not come here. I will put that poor little boy on the top of the tree." And children, for the first time, he realized that why did the spring did not come into his garden, because the children were not coming. So he felt pity on that small child. He went to him, and what did he do? He put the little boy on the top of the tree, and then, "I will knock down the wall, and my garden shall be the children's playground forever and ever." He was really very sorry for what he had done. So he crept down the stair and opened the front door quite softly and went out into the garden. Now, children, he was feeling sad. That's why he did not allow children to come to his garden. He wanted to help that little boy. He opened the door and went out into the garden. But when the children saw him, they were so frightened that they all ran away. When the children saw him that he had opened the door, children, they all ran away, for his eyes were so full of tears that he did not see the giant coming. Now, children, that poor boy, he could not run away because his eyes were full of tears, that he did not see the giant coming. And the giant stood up behind him and took him gently in his hand. Now, children, the giant came to him. He put the boy in his hand, put him to the tree. Children, only the little boy, because he could not run because there were tears in his eyes, and the giant children strolled up behind him, took him gently in his hand and put him up into the tree. And the tree broke at once into blossom. The moment he had put that boy on the tree was so happy that, children, lot of flowers blossomed there, and the bird came and sang on it. And suddenly, children, lot of birds were there, and they sang on it. And the little boy stretched out his two arms and flung them round the giant's neck. Now, children, that boy, he was so happy that he put both of his arms towards around the giant's neck. Okay, the giant's neck, and he kissed him. And the other children, when they saw him that the giant was not wicked any longer, came running back. And then came the spring. And children, when the other children, they saw this thing, that the giant is not doing anything to the children, and rather he had picked up the child and put on one of the tree. So they were so happy. They thought that the giant must have changed his nature. So they also came back, and with them came the spring season again. "It is your garden now, little children," said the giant, and he took a great axe and knocked down the wall. Now, children, he was so happy, like the trees and the flowers and the birds in his garden, that he told the children that now, from today, I will allow everybody to come inside the garden. And he knocked down the wall, children. And when the people were going to market at 12, they found that the giant playing with the children in the most delightful garden that had ever seen, in the most beautiful garden that they had ever seen. And children, what happened at 12 o'clock? They found when the people were going to the market. What did they see? They saw that giant was playing with the children. That garden was one of the most beautiful gardens they had ever seen. Whole day long they played, and in the evening they came to say to bid him goodbye. Now children, whole evening, whole afternoon, whole morning the boys played, and finally they came to say him goodbye at the last, because now it was evening, and they thought that they should bid goodbye to him. They came to him, they told bye to him. But where is your little companion? He said. The boy output into the tree. The giant loved him the best because he had kissed him. Now children, giant could not see that tiny boy, so he asked all the other children that where is your little companion? Where is your little friend to whom just now I had put into the tree? And children, he liked that big boy because for the first time he was kissed in a very loving manner. First time he realized the affection of that child who had kissed him, and he all of a sudden he started loving that child. So he's inquiring about him, but where he is not to see. We don't know, answer the children. He has gone away. Now the children also told that we don't know, and now that boy, I think he has gone away. So they replied to the children. With this film, I end my video here. Now that and children, I will be concluding the rest of the story in my other video. Thank you and have a nice day ahead.